We'll be discussing these gold dots, and I'll explain to all of you how our 80% win rate strategy is currently providing us with such a high win rate. Okay, and we'll also talk about these silver dots, how I managed to take them, and what the underlying logic was behind that decision. All right, then we'll examine what was visible to us within the book map.
All right, and we will also be looking at what specifically was visible to us within the footprint, what kind of signs we were able to observe there, and technically what our perspective was behind all of this, why we had viewed it as a short, and so on. All right, so please do stay with the video. I am making an effort to provide you with more valuable content of this kind in the coming days, so that you can learn something and also earn something.
First, let's explain silver, what I basically observed behind its movements. And then I'll tell you about the gold trade, where I closed 80% of one position at over 400 points and another trade at over 800 points. I had already informed the group about this too. What was it that we were simply seeing in silver? Pause. Within silver, we can clearly see that based on the H4 time frame, right? Pause. We are currently seeing a waves range moving towards the downside. Okay, pause. So the chances were quite high that the market could potentially move downwards. In the H4 Asian session, we had a good close. And if you go into M30, if you go into M15, then the very same model that I've explained to you is formed right here. Okay, now this was visible to everyone. Many people might be seeing this as a buy from here. For me, it could be that for someone it was a liquidity grab or something. And for me, the concept of liquidity wasn't there. For me, the market was creating a downside scenario. So I called it a downside. Now, what happened? The market first grabbed liquidity. Okay, let's look at the footprint. What was the footprint showing us? It becomes much cleaner over there. Here you can observe in Delta, you'll notice that we don't actually use Delta, but I'm just telling you for reference some other things that we do use. So here in Delta, it's quite clear that the buyer is very aggressive. Okay, they were attempting to break through the high point, but despite the significant spreading in the candle at that moment and all the conditions being present, they ultimately failed. Okay, later on, they provided us with their information in a slightly more refined manner. From here, you can clearly see that in silver, pause, there's very strong buying happening. But what was happening here was that your buyers were pulling their orders out. Pause, right, they were exiting the market. Now, what exactly does this mean? Pause. It simply means that pause buyers don't want to buy anymore. So what happens then? Pause. The market can dump, pause, and how far can it actually dump? Up to 70 is fine, which seems appropriate for your area. All right, I had taken my positions up to 70 and then up to 69. I had closed a portion of my trade here. The rest I held, and after that, you will observe the entire scenario unfold. The market moves upwards, then it retraces. Okay, the final leg picks up its orders. Okay, last liquidity, and after that, your completion phase begins. Okay, from this point, it starts to dump. Seller, you can clearly see. Various selling activity begins because a completion phase was underway and then distribution was happening. After that, the market completely pushed everything downwards. All right, now let's turn our attention to gold. Let's take a look at it. By the way, this trade has a 1.3 risk-reward ratio. It's not a small trade. People are observing this on higher time frames. You don't often find trades on the bigger time frames. That's just not how it happens. This is a larger time frame, and the risk to reward ratio is also quite good. Okay, the main issue is simply whether you can grasp how exactly these things work. Now let's move on to gold. On gold, you can clearly see I took this particular chart. All right, using that very same model, if you come into the H4 time frame, you'll be able to see. Now our overall analysis, you can see it all very strong bearish. 4 bearish candles have closed. Okay, if you get inside the F15, you will see things a little more clearly there. All right, that's our trading model. Now, many people ask how you determine this. That happens with time. When you stick to a strategy again and again, things start to make sense to you on their own. So in the morning, the market within its elevation in the first attempt grabbed liquidity on the upside. If I can show you the gold situation here. All right, so in gold, we were observing, this was during the morning hours, a very strong delta. This means buyers were attempting to push prices higher, but they got sorted out and buyers ended up getting trapped. And subsequent to that, you witnessed this entire flex movement. I had already updated this in the group, mentioning that this particular low was our initial target. Okay, now from this point, we might potentially see some buying activity. So what exactly happened with NIR? Once again, the model holds true. You'll also be able to observe this on the H4 chart. All right. Now, in the lower time frame, the market has been tapped. Okay, on the F15 chart, you'll get a much clearer picture. The market has tapped it. Our trend line is now approaching. The probability from 7 is becoming quite high there. And once it reached this point, your buyers were completely absorbed. All right. And after that, the market has also pushed everything downwards. You see, let me show you what had been formed right here. You can clearly see it.
you have a very strong delta volume. It's quite large. They're trying hard outside, yet they manage to score high. Results are coming in.
Within F15, you receive confirmation that the market has the potential to move further downwards. However, in the CFD, the market actually closed at a higher position, but then it subsequently slipped downwards internally. If we consider the book map, you will observe precisely the same pattern within its interface.
Look, they were very strong buying in the Bookmap AUSD, of course, right? But it's failing again and again after reaching a high pause, right? And why was it failing?
Because we were observing the market placing orders downwards, it could potentially target this specific level. There are also several other orders positioned here. If the long position isn't closed, it's quite possible that it might gap down and the market could then target even lower levels. So this was the general broad overview of the situation. All right, if I were to fast forward this, you would then see the entire scenario unfold. I had already closed my trading book late last night, but then you will clearly see the complete picture. You'll also notice silver in this. For silver, you can observe strong selling activity taking place. All right. And if you look downwards, you'll see that orders are continuously being added. And later, the market began to target those positions that were lying below the established base. So what exactly was happening here?
We've used the entire combination, of simple transition along with the structure. And then we did a confirmation to see if large players had any interest on that side or not.
The area that we ourselves define and mark out, the things that we are thinking about and considering, that is solely our own personal thought process and perspective. However, when a large player's contribution or involvement